Thank you for tuning into The Difference today. On today's program, we're going to be discussing courage and the amount of courage it takes to take action. You know, it's one thing to believe strongly in something, but it's a totally different level when you are willing to take action upon what you believe in. The Bible speaks a lot about this. In Deuteronomy 31:6, we read the words, "Be strong and courageous, and do not be afraid or terrified, for the Lord your God goes with you, and he will never leave you nor forsake you."
Amen. He will not. No one knows that more than our guest today, who has the expertise that has taken her places where her strength, courage, and faith were tested. Michele Assad is a former undercover CIA agent and counterterrorism expert who has been clear to tell her incredible story of struggle, unexpected challenges, and how her deep-rooted faith helped her defeat incredible odds. Welcome, Michele, to our show.
Michele, how are you today?
Thanks so much. Glad to have you. Thank you.
So you've got this amazing book, Breaking Cover, and you tell a story that a lot of people saw play out on the headlines of newspapers and television channels around the world, but really didn't have an understanding of how much conflict and struggle was involved. You know, before we get into the story, I'd like to ask you, how did you grow up? Because when you think about CIA, all the movies and all the stuff that we kind of encounter, it's like CIA agents are incubated somewhere and they've all got a serial number behind their ear.
This is what you're going to be from day one.
You know, I mean, it's like they came and got you out of the maternity ward and they started training you to be a ninja, and by the time you were 8, you could, dominate the whole world. What does a human being who serves in the CIA, where do they start?
Well, if you'd told me when I was young that I was going to be a CIA agent, I would have thought you were lying. It was like the last thing. It would never have occurred to me because I'm from a really small town in Central Florida, a very rural area. My parents didn't talk about foreign affairs or international relations. We didn't travel, so I really knew nothing about the world. And so what's fascinating is that I learned that even though you could be disadvantaged in terms of your background, when you have a passion for something and you truly, dedicate your life to Christ, he'll take you to places that you don't even imagine, that you don't even know exist.
Yeah, well, and in terms of disadvantage, it might not follow the typical pedigree, but I would think that an upbringing where family was a very strong bond and the community you grew up in was, kind of what you'd say is just stereotypical middle America.
Yes.
That kind of helps you stay grounded in the work you do around the world because you understand and remember what it is and why you're doing what you do.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about preparing for this interview today, and I was like, I've never sat in a graduation speech where the person giving the commencement address goes, some of you will be doctors and lawyers and teachers and CIA agents. That never makes the list, but somewhere in that audience, there are individuals who might be called into that line of duty and service. How did that happen for you? When did that transition come?
So I was fascinated by international things because of National Geographic magazine, funny enough. So my neighbor...
Be careful what your kids are reading.
So my neighbor had all these magazines, and I would sit and thumb through the pages of these glossy spreads, and I was fascinated because it was something I knew nothing about. And then I was also fascinated when missionaries would come to the church and talk about what ministry was like abroad. And something about that lifestyle was really interesting to me, yet I didn't feel called towards traditional ministry per se. And then when I got the opportunity right after graduation from high school to go on a mission trip to Egypt, I just jumped on it.
Yeah.
And that changed the course of my life. Because while volunteering for a summer in an orphanage, it exposed me to Middle Eastern culture, which was so far removed from anything that I understood or knew. And it kind of began this passion to understand foreign cultures.
Yeah, and I think that that's a very important dynamic to point out because a lot of times, especially here in America, we want to solve a problem from our perspective, not recognizing that the perspective we have really doesn't apply in the situation. We see a culture and a group of individuals do something in a way that we think is totally backwards. And we say, well, why don't they just do it this way? And the reality of it is that that's not an option in the dynamic in the world that they're living in.
So after your mission trip, did you just say they came and found you and saying you're going to be a CIA agent, or now you said, hey, sign me up? Or
well, after that,
was there a website?
I'm wondering, like, did they find you
no
and just
websites,
take you away and say you're a CIA agent?
So I took that opportunity when I was in college to do mission trips, so Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, and I just wanted to get abroad as much as possible. And then after my husband and I got married, we moved to D.C., I still didn't know what God had for us. It was a very long and difficult road, but I eventually got a master's degree in Arab studies from Georgetown.
Okay.
And the CIA recruits out of all the local universities.
Correct. And so you've got, you're kind of right place, right time.
Yes.
But part of your story is that you and your husband both served together.
Yes.
Now that's an even more interesting aspect of this angle, because how does that happen?
How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, did y'all sit down and say, hey, you never guess who I talked today? Funny, I met the same guy,
So it's interesting. My husband actually is from Egypt, and he's a Christian who came to the United States to get his education because he was a persecuted Christian. And at that time under Mubarak, they basically told him, because of his activities and his parents' ministry in Egypt, that he could not study there. So university was closed to him. But he grew up in a part of Egypt where the ideology of Al-Qaeda comes from. And so he grew up going to school with kids whose parents led terror cells in Egypt, and was very familiar, obviously, with this ideology and with Islamic extremism. And so when this opportunity came up, the CIA came and the recruiters talked about what it was like to work for the CIA. He was all over that.
Yeah.
And I was like...
He felt like his life experiences had given him a lot of opportunity to serve there.
Right, and having native Arabic, it's perfect, really. And me, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm the kind of person who the CIA would be looking for. But when we went through this long process of getting into the CIA, I thought, well, if I'm not appropriate, then they'll cut me.
Yeah.
And that
because I was thinking, maybe they were on Match.com and they did like this common interest thing. CIA came up and, there they were. But, it's a very fascinating story, and you tell so much of it in your book. I want you to hear more about Michele's incredible story. I want you to understand the sacrifice and courage that people who serve this country do on a daily basis, and allow those words to inspire you to have courage in whatever it is that you're serving towards. I want you to stay right where you are, but first I want you to find out how you can get a copy of Michele's book today.
When you give to Sanctuary of Hope, you are giving a child a chance at life and a hopeful future. For your gift of $50 or more, you will receive as a gift a special coffee mug, an inspiring prayer journal, and Michele Assad's book, Breaking Cover. And for a gift of $150 or more, you will receive all 3 gifts, along with a framed wall art featuring a familiar blessing from Pastor Hagee.
And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord
call the number on the screen or visit jhm.org.
Dear Pastor Hagee, I just wanted to write you to say how honored Rayla Jean and I are to have been partners in your ministry all these years, and to see all the amazing things you've accomplished around the world with the gifts we and others like us have gladly given over the years.
I want to thank you for making it possible for us to preach the gospel to the nations of the world. Thank you, and God bless you.
Become a partner today. Call the toll-free number or visit jhm.org.
There are thousands of children who are rejected, who are unwanted, who are being systematically murdered in America's abortion mills. I see their little hands reaching toward us saying, "Help me." How can we turn a deaf ear to their desperate little cries?
With your help, we can give mothers and their unborn children a future and a hope, a sanctuary of hope. For your gift of $500 or more to Sanctuary of Hope, you will receive a limited edition, framed 16 by 20 painting entitled Hope and Liberty. And for your gift of $1,500 or more, you will receive a custom bronze statue measuring over a foot in height, honoring America and our unwavering support of Israel. For more information, call the number on the screen or visit our website.
Will you help me reach out to them?
Welcome back to The Difference. We're speaking today with Michele Assad, who served in the CIA and had a very specific mission that you're familiar with, whether you know it or not. Michele, take us to that mission and the thing that you cover in Breaking. The Breaking covers actually the title. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we were asked to help out with an effort to identify persecuted Christians in Iraq or Syria that wanted to leave the region and to find a way to get them out of ISIS territory. And the hardest part of that effort was finding a country to receive these persecuted Christians. So we found a group to work with in northern Iraq. These are people who were told by ISIS either convert or die.
Yeah. And you know, that's not propaganda, that's a reality.
It's a reality.
Yeah.
And so they fled really with just the clothes on their back. They fled from villages all over northern Iraq and ended up in Erbil, Kurdistan, and just flooded into the churches and mosques and all those things.
They were just desperate.
Desperate to put a roof over their head. And so the idea was for us to use our knowledge of the Middle East and our substantive expertise of operations in difficult places to help find a way to get these people out and a place for them in a receiving country.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is it's not like they were given this information of convert or die and then ignored.
Right.
You know, it's not like the people who made that mandate. It's not when ISIS tells you that, they then pursue you until they can take you and go through the process of either conversion or torture and death.
So they were shelling their village. So they ran for their lives at that time. And at that point in Iraq's history, they had already taken over the Yazidi villages and taken away young girls as sex slaves and all of these horrible things, killed a lot of the men. And so they knew what was in for them if they didn't run.
Well, and even in running, it's not like they're just going to let them run to the next city and leave them alone. They're going, they're going to continue to pursue until after. So, you know, a lot of times, back to that Western concept and mindset, we are a nation that's blessed with space.
True.
So if we've got a problem, we just move away from the problem, and then we've solved the situation. You know, in that region of the country, it doesn't happen that way.
So ISIS, when they went into their homes and they started, you know, taking things and taking over these spaces, these villages, they would call them on their cell phones and said, I'm standing in your house right now. I know your name. I know the names of all your children. And if you come back over into this territory, or if we find you where you are, we're going to kill you. We'll slit your throats and kill your children. Yeah. So it was very real to them.
And so in the book, you describe a rescue mission that you and your husband, you worked on and were able to actually rescue how many individuals?
149 was the number. And that evacuation occurred on December 10th, 2015 by the grace of God.
Yeah. And you know, the thing about 149, some people turn around and they say, well, you know, it's 149. But those are lives that are going to go on being lived. Those are generations that are going to continue. Those are grandfathers that, you know, those are grandfathers in the future that were going to sit down and tell their grandchildren, when I was a boy, this is how I got to where I am now.
Right.
You know, how much of that aspect kind of gave you strength in the midst of the mission?
Well, yeah, I would be praying about this, and I'd be down on my hands and knees and just intercessory type prayer over this whole project. And at one point, I heard God saying to me, because I was just begging for him to come in and move and make a way. And at one point he said, I'm not doing this for you. This is my project.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, so that changes the prayer altogether.
Yeah.
So we're his tools, and he will make a way for his people to demonstrate how very much he cares about those people's lives and how he cares about the tiniest details of our own lives.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I think it's interesting you put it that way in the context of what you felt the Lord say to you. There are so many people that are watching and they feel like they are desperately trying to solve their problem. It might not be a CIA problem where they're looking to take refugees out of a war-torn country, but they're trying to solve a business problem. They're trying to solve a family problem. They're trying to solve, there's pastors that are trying to solve church problems. Sure. And I think it's an important perspective for them to understand that, you know, if it's God using you to solve the problem, it's just a matter of time before it gets solved.
Yes.
You know, and it's not on you, it's his work that he's doing in you.
And it changes the way you pray.
Correct. It's his project. So you just kind of turn a plea of despair into praise. You're like, God, I praise you that you're going to do this. You know, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I'm going to give you the chance to do it.
Did you ever feel like I want to give up, though? Are you and your husband talking and thinking the circumstances? What about my own life? How am I going to continue doing this?
So, as you saw in the book, it was very dicey because when we thought we were about to evacuate these people, then the Russians had told the Iraqis that they were going to be shooting rockets and missiles across their airspace. And so it all fell apart because the airspace was shut down and we lost our airplane. And so at that point in time, it all fell apart. And I got sick, and you had this moment where you just felt like, I don't know how this is ever going to happen, how it's going to come together.
Yeah, we went from 1 strike to 2 strikes to 3 strikes. How many times can we swing?
Yes.
And the thing that kept kind of resounding and echoing in me as I was reading the book, not from just the story itself, but the marital dynamic.
Yes.
If Kendall and I are having a discussion about work, it doesn't involve life and death and even not even just the individuals you're working towards, your own. You and your husband are both working in a very hostile and volatile environment on a daily basis. How much did that play into y'all's relationship?
Oh, my goodness. So, well, first of all, I don't think I could have done it without Joseph by my side. And everything that I know about Arab culture, all those subtle dynamics, I wouldn't have learned in a book or a classroom. I learned through Joseph explaining these things to me. And, when you're living in places where Al-Qaeda is running around, you're in war zones, you're in really dangerous places, nobody better than your spouse to be by your side, providing counter surveillance for your operations, preparing each other to go out and meet your terrorist source. So we collaborated constantly. And who knows you better than your spouse? That's right. And so and then of course when you're being shelled by rockets and car bombs are going off and Joseph's like throwing his body over mine in the bunker. I mean, thank God we had each other.
Well, and therein lies a real question and answer about what does God give you to get through something? He gives you kind of everything you need before you go. Because I've spoken with individuals who, they've worked on undercover projects or they've worked in things that not everybody gets to know about. And the one gnawing question in the back of their mind is, who can you trust?
You can't trust many people. And even when you're meeting with a source that you have recruited and you're supposed to trust, you can never really trust them because you are, at the end of the day, dealing with someone who has killed people. And so you've got to walk into every operation planning for the worst case scenario.
And given the fact that they've gone to that level of action in their own life, you have to be aware that, given the choice, it's probably going to be you instead of them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so what was it like whenever you got to the point where, okay, this is going to happen, wheels up?
Whew, boy, tears.
Yeah.
In that moment, all I could do, I was just so full of gratefulness and gratitude for all that God had done for these people and for allowing us to be a part of it, to see it happen. And it was the biggest faith builder of my life, really, in that moment. And, we just found ourselves praying over these people's lives, praying for their future, because just because you've made it to your new country doesn't mean your life's going to be easy at that point.
No, you've gotten them out of life and death, but there's still a lot of challenges ahead for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, have you had any opportunity to keep up with the individuals that you've worked with in this mission?
Yes, we've kept up with quite a few of them. Yeah.
And everybody is obviously glad to be away from where they are, but doing well where they're at.
So there are some that are doing extremely well. We're so proud of them. It's been a huge struggle, but they just, keep moving forward in faith. And then a few actually did return to Iraq when places like Mosul were taken back from ISIS, and they thought they could go back to their villages. Yeah. But unfortunately, those villages have been so badly destroyed, and the infrastructure has been obliterated. And so it's going to be years before they're truly inhabitable.
Well, and even then, that struggle still continues over there.
Of course, absolutely, because there's pockets of bad guys all over the place.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Michele. Don't go away. We'll continue our conversation with Michele in just a moment. But first, find out how you can make a difference by taking home Michele's book today.
When you give to Sanctuary of Hope, you are giving a child a chance at life and a hopeful future. For your gift of $50 or more, you will receive as a gift a special coffee mug, an inspiring prayer journal, and Michele Assad's book, Breaking Cover. And for a gift of $150 or more, you will receive all 3 gifts, along with a framed wall art featuring a familiar blessing from Pastor Hagee.
And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord
Call
make
the number
his
on the
face-
screen or visit jhm.org.
There are thousands of children who are rejected, who are unwanted, who are being systematically murdered in America's abortion mills. I see their little hands reaching toward us saying, "Help me." How can we turn a deaf ear to their desperate little cries?
With your help, we can give mothers and their unborn children a future and a hope, a sanctuary of hope. For your gift of $500 or more to Sanctuary of Hope, you will receive a limited edition, framed 16 by 20 painting entitled Hope and Liberty. And for your gift of $1,500 or more, you will receive a custom bronze statue measuring over a foot in height, honoring America and our unwavering support of Israel. For more information, call the number on the screen or visit our website.
Will you help me reach out to them?
Dear Pastor Hagee, I just wanted to write you to say how honored Rayla Jean and I are to have been partners in your ministry all these years, and to see all the amazing things you've accomplished around the world with the gifts we and others like us have gladly given over the years.
I want to thank you for making it possible for us to preach the gospel to the nations of the world. Thank you, and God bless you.
Become a partner today. Call the toll-free number or visit jhm.org.
Welcome back to The Difference. Michele Assad has shared with us an exciting story that God used her to serve a community of people that desperately needed an answer. One of the things that we've talked about is your work as the CIA and some of the training that you've received. I read in the book, and you know, we've talked about it a little bit in preparation for the interview. You are an expert in reading body language. So first and foremost, when you read body language, what are you trying to gather other than just the general information idea? What are you trying to assess?
You're trying to assess somebody's motivations primarily, and you're trying to assess how to talk to them in a way that gets what you need out of them. And so when you're a counterterrorism officer, your whole purpose is to stop terrorist attacks from occurring. Yeah. So you need that person to give you that very sensitive insider information. And a lot of them are scared for their life. So you've got to build this level of trust with them. And it requires constant reading of both your verbals and nonverbal behavior to make that human connection.
Okay, so you're reading body language. You've sat here and visited with Kendall and I for, the better part of a half hour. Tell me what you see.
Well, I wish all my interviews were this easy, I would say.
Good. Well, that means that I've fooled you.
No, I mean, this is easy because we're coming from the same faith. We're coming from similar backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And most of the time I'm dealing with terrorists who have very radical ideology, who think women should never leave the home, should never be, having a job, never mind working for the CIA.
So can they trust you more because it's a male-dominated field, so do they?
They certainly don't walk in the door thinking they can trust me.
Yeah, and you talk about Eastern and Western mindsets there, where there's a lot of talk about inequality in the West, and rather than jump into that political hotbed, when you look at the rest of the world, the West is very progressive in how much equality is available.
So true.
Whenever you're dealing with those balances of Western and Eastern, how do you present that information that allows that barrier to come down? Because they don't see it as wrong. It's not like they're making a conscious decision to go against what's right. Yeah. This is how they were raised.
Exactly. And so I had to hit it head on in those meetings. Okay. Right in the beginning, right in the first 5 minutes of that debriefing session. So he thinks that I'm not intelligent. I couldn't possibly know anything about the Arab world. Yeah. I'm a dumb woman.
And the reason I say property, I don't want to offend any of our viewers, but
this is how
in a Middle Eastern mindset, women are traded. They're bought and they're sold. There's an exchange that takes place between two men to decide what the value of this one's worth, and if you pay enough, you can take her.
Yeah, you don't even sign your own marriage contract. Your father signs it for you.
Correct.
In Islam. So so I had to then walk in the door, be confident, show my own body language, and then speak certain types of Arabic words to show that I didn't just get off the boat. I know this. I'd talk about that. I'd stroke their ego, how much you've done for the CIA and how you've helped save people's lives, and then showcasing my intelligence to them. It sounds weird, but I had to hit it head on, show them what I was really made of, and then I could see as I'm dealing with them, their eyes twitching almost this does not compute. This is not, what is this?
It was almost like a computer that wasn't loading the page.
Were you ever in a dangerous situation where maybe they were going to take action towards you? Or
thank God, not in those operational moments, no. But once they decided to trust me, I could just, the tension just broke. Now they really wanted to work harder to impress me, which is fine, to do what I'm asking them to do. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of nuances of eyebrows and smiles and twitches of eyes. What's the strangest body language, nonverbal communication that you ever encountered in the CIA? I mean, anybody staying on their hands and
almost. So I had one particular very tough operational meeting where we thought possibly this person was a double agent, and I had a list of potential countries of who he might be working with. But I was having a hard time in that debriefing, getting him to reveal with his body language any line of questioning that made him uncomfortable, because that's what I'm looking for. Until I got to a particular country. And once I started asking about his relationship with this country, this 6'2" big guy took the pillow out from behind him and started hugging it. Like this.
And you're like,
and I was like,
we've had a breakthrough.
What is going on? And the whole time we talked about this subject, he was doing this and kind of holding it in front of him. Like sometimes he would push it towards me, like push me back. And then I let it go. And I let him calm down again and talked about something that was very easy. And then about 20 minutes later, I came back to it, I revisited it, and here comes the pillow.
He's got it tucked behind
and I thought, well, bingo, I think I found what the problem was.
Well, so, honey, I want all the pillows off the couch whenever we get home this afternoon. Now, same topic, different subject. You and your husband ever analyze each other that way? I mean, do you ever bring your training into the relationship where you're like, hey, honey, you're hugging a pillow. I'm coming back to this in 20 minutes.
No, I mean, you have to know when to use it and when not to. But also, when you're married, you know each other's nonverbals. You can't help it.
Exactly. And it's kind of like Kendall asked a question and I won't answer, and she's like, don't talk to me that way. I was like, I didn't say anything, and she's like, that's the point.
I saw your face.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't say anything. Well, Michele, for what you've done for the people that you went and served and for what you did to represent this country in that service, I want to say thank you. And, just all the best with being able to share your story and help others recognize that they can make a difference if they're willing to take action and be courageous.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what you're going through today, I want you to know that whatever the circumstance may be, it's not yours to solve. Amen. God is going to use you to solve it, but He's the one who provides the solution. Remember Deuteronomy that we spoke about at the beginning of the program. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. That doesn't matter if it's in your living room or on the mountaintops in Iraq looking for a place to go. God is by your side and He will help you make a difference. Thank you for joining us today. Michele, thank you.
Thank you, Michele.
So much.
Yeah. I'm watching you. God bless. We'll see you again very soon.